start doing that. There we go. I'm Rob. I use the pronouns he, him. I'm delighted to welcome you all today. I work for a climate justice collective called Platform, and alongside some of my colleagues on this call and some colleagues not on this call, I coordinate UK Divest, which hopefully you will all have heard of. It's the national campaigning coordinating body for the grassroots divestment campaigns across the UK. Sally is one of my colleagues who will be working with us tonight. Sally, do you want to just come off mute and say hello while we're waiting for more people to join?
Hi everyone, it's really amazing to be here with you tonight. My name is Sally. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a divestment campaigner with Friends of the Earth Scotland and also with UK Divest.
Thank you so much, Sally. We're delighted to be joined tonight by one of our amazing action organisers, one of over 40 action organisers across the UK, who is Janet Palmer. Janet, if you want to just come off mute and just say hello to everybody.
Hi everyone, I'm Janet. I live in Stratford-upon-Avon and I'm a member of Warwickshire Climate Alliance, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you so much, Janet. It's great to have you with us. We're also delighted to be joined by Asad Rehman from War on Want, from Global Campaigns for Climate Justice and from the Climate Justice Coalition in the UK. Asad is we are very grateful that Asad is joining us tonight, as he is coming back from lots of different international travel in the movement for climate justice. So Asad, please say hello to everybody.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Rob, and thank you to UK Divest for the opportunity to join you this evening.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get started in just a moment. I'm still just seeing some of these numbers clicking up. So, but we are at nearly 5 past now. So I suppose we shall get going. This will be, or is being recorded. So anybody that's missed it will be sent this. So what are we here to do? We are here to talk about what we're going to do for the Day of Action, which is going to be on the 24th of March. So first we're going to hear from Sally, who's going to run through us a brief overview of what we've done so far, what's going on right now, and what's coming up. We'll then hear Sally do a brief interview with Janet, asking about why she's signed up to be an action organizer, what they've got planned, and why she's taking part, before hearing from Asad about some of the context that we're doing this Day of Action within, the cost of living crisis and the ongoing climate crisis around the world, and why that should motivate us to take actions to demand climate justice. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I'll pass now to Sally, who will briefly run us through an overview of why we're here, what we're doing, and where it's happening.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's really wonderful to be here with you tonight, and we're thinking about this incredible Divestment Day of Action. We're hoping it's going to be the biggest ever Divestment Day of Action, and it's got 3 key aims. First of all, we're hoping to raise a lot more awareness about how much our councils are currently investing in fossil fuels and why we need them to divest from crisis and stop investing in the fossil fuel companies that are fueling both the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis. We also are organising this day because it's a brilliant opportunity to get involved in the divestment movement and help to build it all around the UK and around the world. And it's also aiming to show solidarity with communities around the world who are already suffering the most from the climate crisis, and to stand together with them for climate justice. And we're thrilled that we have a date for the Day of Action. It's going to be Friday, the 24th of March. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Thanks so much. So this date, the 24th of March, was chosen at an incredible fossil-free gathering that we had in Staffordshire in September last year, when around 70 amazing divestment campaigners all came together to help support each other and also to make plans for how we can win our divestment campaigns and get our councils to stop investing in fossil fuel companies. And so far, 40 wonderful action organisers have already signed up to organise actions in their local areas. And together, the action organisers and UK Divest have been having lots of really exciting discussions to plan the key messages for the Day of Action. And we can find out about that key message in the next slide. And it's going to be all about how we can divest from crisis and invest in our future. And we have, together, the action organisers and UK Divest have planned a visual theme for the Day of Action, which is all about messaging around fossil fuels versus green investments. So we're going to be showing how we can really take our money out of the companies that are causing the crisis and invest in a positive future that will benefit communities here in the UK and all around the world. And if we go to the next slide, thank you so much. We've got lots more information about the Day of Action on the UK Divest website. There's a whole page dedicated to the Day of Action, and you're very welcome to click on that page just now. I think Rihanna's going to pop it in the chat, and you can find out lots more tips about how to get involved. And one of the really exciting things you'll find on that page is an amazing map which lists all the actions that have already been planned so far by the incredible action organisers. And I think you can find the map on the next slide. Amazing, thank you. So really great news is we already have 15 actions that have been registered from London, from near Bath. We've got quite a few around Birmingham and the Midlands, several near Manchester, Carnarvon in North Wales. We've got some in Yorkshire, also some in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And another 15 have been committed to, but they're still to be added to the website, which is really great news. And the first thing that is a great idea to do is to have a look at the website and see if you can find an action in your local area. But don't worry if you can't see a local action, because there's a great thing that you can do instead. If there isn't an action plan for your area, you can register your own action. And there's loads of help available from UK Divest to help you with this. All you need to think about just now is a name, maybe the name of your group. If you have an idea for a location where you would like to do an action, it could be maybe outside your local council office. And then you can add a brief idea of what you would like to do, but you're also very welcome to say all the information's coming soon. And once you register an action, you're going to be put in touch with all the amazing action organisers. We have a WhatsApp chat where we chat about lots of different ideas for the Day of Action and props and art ideas. And there's loads and loads of support and training available. And 40 action organisers are just waiting to help out. So they would love to hear from you. And if we can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. And one of the action organisers is really excitingly here with us tonight. We're absolutely thrilled that Janet Palmer from Stratford-upon-Avon is with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining, Janet.
That's no problem at all.
And as Janet said, she is a member of the Warwickshire Climate Alliance, and Janet leads on their divestment campaign. And Janet, I wondered if you could tell us how you got involved in divestment campaigning.
And I'm the most unlikely person ever to be involved in divestment, because about 3 years ago, I would have said that I didn't know anything about investing, nothing about stocks and shares. Finance just made my eyes glaze over. So how I got involved was that originally someone from Friends of the Earth asked me if anyone in Warwickshire would be interested in working with divestment campaigns, because a group called Border to Coast nationally were trying to share information and to lobby the pension partnership Border to Coast, which is like a collection of different local authorities who are working together on investing local pension scheme money. So that I couldn't find anyone in Warwickshire, and that surprised me. So I started to read around the topic, and what struck me was that the argument for divestment was absolutely clear, and yet fossil fuel companies and financial advisors were making a big deal out of it and making it so complicated with lots of financial jargon that it was something that ordinary people felt intimidated by. And I certainly felt that I didn't have enough knowledge to campaign on divestment. So, but it occurred to me that we really had to get a grip on this and that we had to make our voice heard. So what we did with Warwickshire Climate Alliance was invite Mark Campanale from Carbon Tracker to talk to us about the issue. And he made everything so clear was in such an expert way that gave us confidence to start our own campaign and to talk to councillors in Warwickshire County Council about their pension fund. And we found out that Warwickshire County Council has just over £94 million invested in oil and gas. So it was clear to us that we needed to publicise that and to make our views known to local councillors, and particularly the 5 councillors on the Pension Fund Investment Subcommittee, because it was their job to guide strategy for the council. So we started emailing them and asking questions, and that was interesting. It helped us to learn more about the issue, but also we realised that because it's not a popular topic for conversation with ordinary people, that it wasn't really receiving enough attention from the public. So us just emailing councillors wasn't having much of an impact. And we began a digital letter campaign to try and get residents of Warwickshire to send an email to the councillors on the Pension Fund Investment Subcommittee. And we tried to make our argument as clear and straightforward as possible. And that was saying Warwickshire County Council's local government pension scheme still has about 94 million invested in fossil fuel producers. We can't go on supporting these industries that are destroying our climate. There is no planet B. It is clear that oil and gas stocks cannot be part of a financially sound long-term investment strategy. And it's as simple as that, really. So we have had about 230 people up to now who've participated in that campaign, but without any reply to us from the councillors on the committee. So we thought the next step would be to join in with the UK Divest Day of Action to have a physical presence on the steps of County Hall in Warwick. So that's why I got involved.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Janet. And can you tell us what you're planning to do in Warwick for the Day of Action?
Yes, well, what we thought was we'd try and make it as easy as possible for people to get involved. So we were thinking about the theme of presenting the oil barons and fossil fuel destruction as opposed to green investment in a positive future, and how we could have some sort of contrast with that. So we had a little craft morning. So got people to make hearts such as this with slogans: for the love of the planet, divest, and for the love of nature, divest. And we had the idea of dressing someone up as an oil baron. So when we were on calls with the UK Divest nationally, these were the ideas that inspired us, that you could have somebody dressed up as an oil baron, one end of a rope, tug of war, ordinary people pulling the other end of the rope and not succeeding in making any progress, and the oil baron just looking unconcerned. They've got such power, they've got such influence, the oil and gas producers. all the lobbyists that they send to COP meetings, for example, and ordinary people are struggling to make their views known in opposition to that. So you never know, we might succeed in having some sort of tableau showing an oil baron versus ordinary people. And we're going to meet at 11 o'clock outside Shire Hall in Warwick. We're going to hold up our signs, have photographs taken, and deliver a letter to the councillor who is responsible for the portfolio for environment and the climate, to say that we've been trying for some time to influence the councillors on the committee, the Pension Fund Investment Subcommittee, but it's now time we want to involve other councillors and to see what they've got to say and to ask them to engage with us on this issue.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And the final question is, can you tell us why you're taking part in the Day of Action? And if people on the call tonight are listening and are thinking, oh, I don't know very much about divestment, should I get involved? I don't really know. Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, just to do as I did and just have confidence that you don't have to be a financial expert. Not many people are, but in fact it is common sense that we can't go on with oil and gas, that there is an energy transition. Everybody knows that, so there's no point pretending it's not happening. And I think it's Mark Campanale who talks about Blockbuster, the old video shop, that Blockbuster, its time had come, it had to finish, and the shares crashed. There was no money in it. And it's exactly the same with fossil fuels. So don't be blinded by science, don't be blinded by lots of financial jargon, but just know that you can make your view heard.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Janet. And it often makes me think about a quote from Greta Thunberg, where she says that all the great movements in history to change things for the better have come from people power, and that by joining together with all these campaigners all around the UK and all around the world, we really can make a massive difference for climate justice. Huge thank you, Janet. That was absolutely incredible. And I'm going to pass over to Rob now, who's going to introduce our next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sally. Thank you so much, Janet. That was really nice to hear, Janet. I think it can be really difficult sometimes to think about like the fact that the financial system is not designed in such a way that makes it easy to understand. It's designed to make it hard for you to understand and inaccessible deliberately. It's also designed to prop up a broken and unjust energy system that causes both the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis that we've lived through in the last year and continue to live through now. The spiraling cost of living, the breakdown of the global climate, people being displaced around the world are symptoms of unstable, unjust energy and economy systems that are founded on fossil fuels and funded by groups like our pension funds. This is one crisis, a fossil fuel crisis. Will only intensify if our funds don't divest from fossil fuels and invest in livable futures. Investors like our local council pension funds gamble billions on fossil fuels, propping up a broken energy system when they could be investing in warmer homes, renewable energy, and helping drive transition. If we're going to tackle one crisis, both crises, we need to tackle them at the same time. And we need to divest from crisis and invest in something different, something worth retiring into. After all, pensions are nothing but deferred wages. With that in mind, and apologies for a slight rant instead of an introduction, we have the wonderful Asad to speak to us about the context that our actions are taking place within and more. Thank you, Asad.
Thanks, Rob. As I said, great to see everybody, and I want to apologise up front if I'm not so coherent, because I've literally just got back from being with fossil fuel campaigners from all around the world, from Asia, climate justice campaigners. Been working on strategies and an escalation of the war against the fossil fuel industry and how not only do we fight and resist, but we also move to the transition agenda and build the future we want. And they asked me to send solidarity greetings to this call as well. And I'm the director at War on Want. Some of you probably know War on Want. It's often called the most radical sort of NGO. We work directly with social movements and frontline communities against extractivism, food sovereignty, workers' rights, very strong on climate justice, and obviously also work here in the UK, and we're part of the Climate Justice Coalition, which if you're not a member of, you should join. That's the attempt to make sure we are greater than the individual sum parts and strengthen our movement and our climate justice perspectives. As you've just heard, of course, we're not only facing a climate crisis, and we all, by the fact that you're all on this call, you all know what the science is telling us. We're heading for a warming of the planet of at least 2.4 degrees to 2.7 degrees at minimum, and that is if every pledge and promise is met. And in all of that promises and pledges, we've got to also remember that, you know, the modeling that the IPCC uses is still gambles on a 1 in 3 chance that we will breach the critical guardrail for 1.5, which is incredible because it was meant to be 1.5 to barely survive. Now 1.5 has become the target that countries want to get to. And of course, it's likely we're going to breach that and within this coming decade, and potentially breach 2 degrees within a few years after that. But as we're all living through, we know that there is a cost of living crisis happening here in the UK, and it's happening all around the world, where millions of people are unable to feed their families, heat their homes, even in countries like the UK, 5th richest economy in the world, where we have nurses using food banks and the poor using warm banks. Whilst, of course, we can all see that fossil fuel giants have racked up an incredible 2 trillion in profit since 1990 and over 200 billion just over the last year. And so much money, of course, to be able to invest and lobby and ensure that political decision makers act in their interests and not in the interests of their citizens. And we know that despite all of the scientific evidence and even the reports from the International Energy Association, not the most radical of organizations, which said there can be no new fossil fuel expansion if we want to limit temperatures below 1.5. We know that the UK, the US, the EU, Canada, Australia are all planning a massive expansion of fossil fuels, carbon and climate bombs, enough to blow through not just the 1.5 degree target, but the 2 degree target. And we've seen that the banks, despite the Paris Agreement signed, 6-7 years ago now, have invested an incredible $4.6 trillion into the fossil fuel industry, with about an annual 800 billion each and every year. And well, often we're always told there's no money for the solutions that we want. And we all say, well, actually, there's plenty of money. It's just a choice about where that money is invested. But of course, this is an overlay on a global crisis of inequality, where half of the world's people, about 3.5 billion people, live on the equivalent of $5.50, don't have access to clean energy or electricity. Same amount of people don't have access to public services, social protection, which all of us know was so critical as how we navigated through the COVID pandemic. 2 billion people currently face issues of hunger, 1 billion people without access to clean water, over 1.5 billion without housing. I could go on about the litany of the injustices that there are in the world. And, you know, coming from these meetings with the Global South, I mean, it's always this question about, you know, how do we have countries able to afford this transition in the face of increasing cost of climate impacts. And you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, there was a report out that showed for every $1 of wealth that had been earned by the bottom 90% of the world, the top 1% grabbed $1.7 million, and the billionaires increased their wealth by $2.7 billion a day. So in total, that top 1% have just seized 2/3 of all of the new wealth that's been created since 2020, a whopping 42 trillion. Again, when people say that there's no money to be able to finance the things that we want to do in the transition, well, we know exactly where it is. It's sitting in the coffers of the richest people. And this is, of course, compounding crisis. We work with frontline communities in many, many countries, and including in Sri Lanka, which has just seen both a climate crisis, a debt crisis, and inequality crisis, unable to meet its debt repayments, people unable to afford to even have enough in their energy through the day, the government telling people to eat less, you only eat 2 meals a day because they can't afford food. We have nearly 60 countries now currently on the brink of unsustainable debt payments and debt defaults, where these countries are paying more on those debt payments than they're doing either on their health systems to protect their citizens or to act on the climate crisis. And we know that this is not just about one issue. These are all symptoms of a rigged economic system that has literally looted trillions from the global south. Since 1960, it's estimated $160 trillion in capital flows, unsustainable debt repayments, and illicit tax capital flows through like tax avoidance and tax dodging has gone from the global south to the global north. And for every $1 that is given in any kind of money, that's investment, charity, aid, even you can tell how tired I am. I can't even string a sentence together anymore. For every $1 that flows from the global north to the global south, something like between $14 and $18 flow the other way. So we all can see that these crises are there in front of ourselves. And of course, it's a crisis that's been a long time in the making. Over 500 years, we've had a logic that has exploited the poor, our planet, our nature, and our ecosystems. It spawned everything from slavery and colonialism to what is now called neoliberalism, and nothing, it's said, can ever stand in the way of that relentless pursuit of profit, no matter that they've set the planet on fire, and no matter that we have now scientists actually debating, can humanity survive? Those of you who remember the IPCC report last year said, we may have heard scientists tell us we have a rapidly diminishing window if we want to even have a remote chance of people being able to live with dignity. And to have UN reports saying we have now created a system of climate apartheid where the wealthy are going to use their wealth, the rich are going to use their wealth to seek safety and are leaving the poor to burn or drown. And we can see that at this very moment. You know, we have tens of millions of people starving in climate famines across the Horn of Africa. My country, where I originally come from, in Pakistan, you know, you all saw the devastating floods that happened in Pakistan, a third of the country underwater, millions of people displaced. And that, of course, continues. If you now look at a Google map of Pakistan, we now have inland seas. We have millions of people who have lost absolutely everything. And this is a country where 4 out of 10 people face multiple dimensional poverty, where one pushes people who are barely surviving into not surviving at all. And even here in this country, we have now more people using food banks than ever before, despite the fact that, of course, we can feed the world 3 times over if we move away from our broken industrial agribusiness. And yet we continue to have a government that openly said is planning to squeeze every drop of oil and gas from the North Sea, and of course incredibly open a coal mine. And this is, of course, hand in hand with them continuing to hand over billions to those driving us to the climate catastrophe. And even that shocking news that, of course, you know, the call to put windfall taxes, that Shell didn't even pay any corporation tax, despite even that limited windfall tax. And we know that we're not taxing their profits properly, but these are the companies that we shouldn't be just taxing, because we're actually want to be saying we're opposing their whole business model. These are their simple business model is enough to burn the planet 3 times over. Look, you know, we have, I suppose, in the last 2 years or 3 years in the COVID pandemic, seen how the global rich respond to a global crisis in real time. We all remember no one is safe until everyone is safe. We remember all that mantra, and we remember now, and we can see that millions of people have died needlessly in the global south because rich governments protected the interests of big pharmaceutical companies so they could make a profit of $1 million a second by holding onto those vaccines and not lifting the intellectual property rights to allow the poorest to be able to afford them. We can see already this in these last few weeks, all the big 5 pharmaceutical companies saying that they're going to ramp up the cost of those vaccines to triple and quadruple them out, even though they only cost $1 to $2 to actually make. This is the reality of how they are responding to these crises. And there has to be a very, very different way. And it has to be a really a recognition that, of course, the rich are getting richer. The billionaire class, you know, we can all hear them talking about rockets, and they don't need rockets to go to the moon. Incredibly, if they stack the money that they've got on top of each other, they can reach the moon and back, not just once, but 52 times over. And at the same time, 156 countries around the world are now being told to impose some form of austerity, weaken labour laws, cut wages, privatise what's left of your economy, tax, and create tax-free zones for corporate giants. And all of this, of course, continually, well, stick to it. There's no other alternative to but this mantra of what I call disaster capitalism, trickle-down economics. Has anything ever been less true? And we can see it, of course, in this country with workers out on strike who are seeing their wages being cut, whilst corporate giants taking home billions in profits. We are facing, and I don't want to use war terminology, because I know many of us find that's problematic, but there is a war on our planet. There is a war on the poor, and there is a war on working people. And this war absolutely knows no borders. So we, especially those of us in the global north, have to make sure that our responses, of course, don't retreat beneath the nation state or behind walls and fences. You may have seen the report today in The Guardian that the UN warns that we've now faced people being forced from their homes in climate displacement on biblical levels. And we simply can't turn our backs, of course, on those on the front lines of these climate disasters, especially as our government, of course, plays the race card and legitimizes even more anti-migrant racism and xenophobia. We have a system that props up all of these, whether we're talking about the fossil fuel company or we're talking about the industrial agribusiness or these corporate big pharmaceutical companies, rigged global trade rules, global tax, global corporations, capital and global capital, even having the right to overturn democratic decisions through secret trade clauses, the investor state settlement clause that allows those companies to sue governments if they act on climate change. Now, I was just remembering today, 20 years ago, we marched against the war in Iraq and said no to a war for oil and opposed the illegal war on Iraq. And we knew then, and we said, they can find money to fuel wars and military occupations, but they claim the coffers are empty when it comes to tackling global injustices. And that, of course, we know that has become very, very true on climate as well. So what's really important, and I just want to re-emphasize how important it is that our resistance and the importance of our resistance, particularly here in the UK, the 5th richest economy in the world, where 100 of the most polluting companies are domiciled, where 2/3 of the profits of the City of London come from either fossil fuel extractivism or wider extractivism of the global south. Our politics has to be also global, but we also must have a vision and bring hope to people, because we know that it's economically, technically, and scientifically possible for us to be able to transform away from a fossil fuel-based economy to a better, more fair economy where everyone has the right to live with dignity and in harmony with the planet. What we simply lack is the political will. And the only answer to tackling that political will is we have to build power, and we have to use that power. And I want to just say something about why that divestment movement is so critical to that, and how important all of your work and this idea of coordinated days of action. And let me just say also, you can tell when when I was a bit younger, less grey in my beard, that the irony of that the targets of the divestment, many of the targets of the divestment campaign, 2 of the biggest ones, Shell and Barclays, were the same targets that we had in the anti-apartheid movement. The same corporations that were profiting from apartheid are now profiting from the climate disaster. And that's exactly why our government is not only attacking the right to protest and the right to strike, but as you may know, is announcing soon a plan on limiting our right to be able to even boycott and divest and attack our right to be able to ask our public authorities and public bodies, the very bodies that are accountable to us as citizens, from being able to take those actions that Sally was talking about earlier. And you know, and the reason why they want to do that is not simply because of the amount of money that's at play. Actually, the reason why the divestment campaign is so important is because it provides an opportunity to build collective power, and it provides an opportunity to build the movement that's needed. And so these divestment campaigns aren't simply about the money, and that is really critical, that we of course we do. It's because it tackles the social license of those who prop up the fossil fuel industry. And it's this building of power that they want to restrict. I want to just end with that. IPCC said last year, change is inevitable. The only question is what kind of change, who pays the price and who profits. And so we are in a situation where you're either now on the side of those who are causing injustice, or you're on the side of justice. You're standing with those people who are on the front lines of not just the climate disasters, but the global, and some say the polycrisis or multiple crises. And all of those movements are asking us as citizens in the global north to take action against our companies, our drivers, our governments who are driving many of these crises. So we have to win that argument, of course, but we also have to win the argument about what do we want that investment for. And this is why this moment is really important, because in this moment of crisis, and Milton Friedman, the architect of neoliberalism, said it very, very famously when he was talking about how neoliberalism was going to win. He said, only a crisis, real or perceived, creates real change. And our goal is to keep our policies alive until the politically inevitable becomes the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And that's what we've got to do. Our policies around warm homes, free public transport, the solutions that we need to see at both a local and a national and a global level. And to say that the money that they're talking about, often the pension funds, they're our money. They're the money owned by workers themselves, and that we have a right to say that we don't want to profit them from death. And the movements are changing around the world, and we have to tell a very, very different story as well. And I was just with some of our Chilean comrades, you know, where movements have united and changed the course of history, and they turned a struggle about jobs and prices, about subway prices, into one that said that their goal is that the cradle of neoliberalism would be its graveyard. And remembering that this was a country under military dictatorship exactly because they were posing an alternative to neoliberalism. Or in Colombia at this moment, where a country where one of the most dangerous places to be an environmental defender or a human rights defender, 2 murdered each and every week. We have a movement that is united, trade unions, feminists, and climate groups. And in the words of the new president Petro, he said that the cause of the climate disaster is capital, the cause of war is capital, the cause of poverty is capital. Our war is on capital, and has announced a new ban on all new fossil fuels and government policies to prioritize tackling the climate crisis and tackling inequality, saying those go hand in hand. And we saw a couple of years ago where Indian farmers, 50 million Indian farmers, took to the streets resisting the corporate control of agriculture. And those same farmers are now standing with striking energy workers to stop the privatization of the energy system, and saying and linking that and demanding pensions and living wages for both farmers and workers. So we have a responsibility here, because as I said, it's our banks and corporations, it's our shadowy think tanks that say this. And the only answer to this moment where these monsters seem to be in control all over the place, and as Antonio Gramsci once said, you know, the old world is dying and the new world is struggles to be born, and this is the time of monsters. And we should recognize that. That's why there are so many monsters at this moment, because the old world is dying. and the new one is struggling to be born, and we have to help it be born. And the way to help that be born is to create a movement of movements, one that is rooted in internationalism and solidarity, that is explicit and says the demands we need to make at a national level also have to be a global level. That energy and food should be a right, owned and democratically owned by us, for us, and not for profit. That public services are essential to the transition that we need, both here and globally, that living wages are connected here and globally. And it's great to see so many climate movements standing out currently with striking workers, beginning to build and connect our fights, saying that just transition isn't simply about transition of the fossil fuel workers. It's actually about the kind of economy that we want, the kind of jobs that we're going to create in the future, and of course to dismantle those deadly institutions that prop up the neoliberal system, the IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO. I'm going to end by saying neoliberalism's greatest victory is not what it's done to the economy, not what it's done to society, not even what it's done to fuel and burn the planet. It's what it's done to all of us. It's what it's done to our imaginations, that it said that there's nothing can ever happen, that it's taken away our ability to even imagine there can be something different. It's erased our history of struggles and told us nothing could ever replace that. And we should just remember, as Sally was saying, that the history of all change in the world has come because ordinary people have taken these kind of actions. It was ordinary people in this country who refused to handle slave goods and boycotted the slave sugar, which helped bring down the slave trade. It was ordinary people who hadn't refused to put their money in banks that fueled apartheid and handled apartheid goods that helped bring down the South African apartheid. It was ordinary people in this country who refused to arm dictatorships, which helped our movements in the global South bring down many of the dictatorships. Our climate justice movement has to become a movement for justice. Thank you.
Wow, Asad, tour de force for real. I'm sad there's not the sound of an auditorium clapping and cheering. Though for your benefit, I'm very glad, because it might wake you up more than you'd like right now. I know that you're very much at the moment of collapsing to fall asleep. So thank you so much for coming to join us.
A real pleasure, Rob, and thank you again. And I really do want to say that, each and every one of you on this call, sometimes there's a feeling of despair. This isn't the moment of despair. This is a moment of incredible hope. It's incredible hope, because everywhere around the world, people are resisting, and you are part of an incredible global movement. And we have no choice but to fight, and no choice but to win this fight as well.
Amazing, Asad. Thank you so much. We're going to close out now. So there is a poll that is being sent around to you. Asad, I know you have to leave, so feel free to jump off at any time. Thank you so much. There's a poll going around to you now. I believe Rihanna is sending it to you, which is going to ask you, what are you going to do after this call? Presumably go and look up Asad Rehman and watch everything else that he's ever been on, because he's excellent. But what we would like you to do is go back to the website that we shared earlier in the chat on what you're able to do in terms of registering to do something at the Day of Action, whether that's setting up a new group, getting in touch with UK Divest, encouraging someone to sign up as an organizer, signing up as one yourself, or having a craft making session like the excellent one that we've seen pictures of from Janet on what they're going to be doing on the 24th of March. All of these things are great options, and we're just delighted to have you with us. I'm going to just share a brief message in the chat, linking you to our website in case you haven't been involved in our work before, or involved in divestment campaigns before and have lots of questions about it, what it is, and want to see some reports, some briefings, some guides. You can visit our website. We also run something called the Fossil Free Network, which has hundreds of different excellent campaigners just like you in it. You might already be part of it. who ask each other questions, share skills, and organize together. If you'd like to join this or have any questions, please email us at ukdivest@gmail.com. I can see we've got about 70% answered, Rihanna, so I think it's okay to close it in just a second so that we can just share for everybody what everybody's going to do so that people can see how that's looking. We've got people signing up as Day of Action organisers, arranging meetings. We've got 64% are going to arrange a climate action group meeting for the Day of Action. We've got a couple of people going to get in touch with UK Divest for help, find out more about divestment, about 40%. So we're really delighted to have all of you with us, whatever you're going to do after this call. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Sally. And I think we're going to just close it there, and I'll stop recording if I can.